Are we live? Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our Friday Transportation Seminar. We host these several Fridays a month, and then beginning in the fall will be every Friday again. We're very excited to welcome today Penny Rosenblum from the University of Arizona. Today she'll be sharing her presentation on challenges and considerations for travelers and how can you support people in their independence for those who have visual impairments.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here with you guys. This is a different kind of crowd for me. My background is in special education. Spent a lot of years preparing teachers of visually impaired students and doing research in the field of visual impairment. But transportation is near and dear to my heart because as a person with a visual impairment, I am a non-driver. And so just even coming up here to Portland State for this week, I've been teaching for the special ed department, finding your campus, learning your MAC system, where do I buy a pass, what's the difference between an IHOP and whatever other pass it is, and where do I get off and what routes do I plan, has been a bit of a challenge. And I was very confident today when I came to this building because I previewed it on Wednesday to make sure I knew where it was. So my name again is Penny Rosenblum. I have a few folks in the room. I think I'll be able to see you if you're raising your hand, if you have a comment or a question, but with my own visual impairment, sometimes I miss that stuff, and obviously I'm not seeing you folks at a distance. So if at any point anybody has a question, yell, jump up and down, scream, whatever rocks your boat. Let's start with a little quiz. So we're gonna go to our first, hit the space bar here, Lexi. Actually, I can do it. I can do this part. Well, maybe I can. Why isn't our slides advancing? Okay, this has absolutely nothing to do with transportation, but you are hungry. What food is this? Anybody yell, jump up and down, scream. Pancakes, mac and cheese. Let's see if you're right. Did that help? I put my yellow food in a white bowl. I'm trying to give you some more contrast. What is it? Were you right? No, goldfish crackers. Okay, I gave you some contrast here, and now that it's not blurry, it's easier for you to see. But think about this. If the world was kind of blurry to you as you're walking along and you're looking for signage for the Macs, is there a good contrast between the sign and the background of the sign and the letters on it? How close does somebody need to be to see that signage? How does glare and lighting affect them? Here's another quiz for you. This is a little kid's book. What's it a picture of? It's an animal. Tigger. Is it Tigger? Pretty close, huh? Do you see the way, though, that the paws and the face of this cat type of thing blend in with the background, and how it's really hard to pull out the information? So sometimes, like in a subway station, they put up posters or signs, a bus station, and it's a blue background with dark blue lettering. It's not good contrast. So yes, I might be able to see that there's a display with some type of information, but being able to read that information is a challenge. Now, this was a book I had in a classroom when I was teaching preschool visually impaired kids. And when I asked a student to, blur these out for me in Photoshop, and she saved them for me, she saved this cat and kitten. And I'm like, I didn't give you any pictures of kittens. How many kittens are in this picture? 2? You got a mom cat and 2 kittens. Anybody else see anything different? One little kitten. I never saw this. I shared this book with little preschool age kids for 2 years in a classroom, and I never saw that little kitten between the paws. I knew there was a cat there. It was big. I could get the detail. It was against the white background, and that worked for me. But I missed the details. And so this is something that happens to travelers. They get the big picture, but getting the details. Today, I was on the Max coming in from Milwaukee, where I'm renting this really cool Airbnb. And today was the first day, just because of where I happened to sit, that I discovered that there's these little black signs that have yellow letters running across them telling me what stop is coming next. that was relief for me because I was always afraid as I've been riding it this week, especially I've been riding in the morning because I've been teaching at 9, that I might not hear them call out the stops. So I was like frantically trying to count the number of stops. I'm trying to, okay, I need to get off at the 6th stop. I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, there's the big brown building. So my stop's not the next one. It's the one after. I'm like, man, if I would have known I could have positioned myself in this car to see that black sign with those yellow letters, that would have taken some of my stress out earlier this week. I'm finally getting good. I can recognize Lincoln and 3rd. But not because I see any signs as I go along the way, because I'm now, okay, look for the big bridge, and it's 2 stops after the big bridge. So folks with visual impairment typically have usable vision. There are going to be some people who are totally blind, but what we want to think about is color and contrast for them. You are walking through a hotel lobby. Are you safe? Somebody's looking anxious. She's trying to decide, am I safe? Am I not? Anybody see anything that you might think is dangerous? Yeah, what? You see the stairs? Okay. So when you're thinking about when you're designing something, whether it's an indoor environment or an outdoor environment, contrast. I got to go Wednesday, and can't say the name of it, Malona Falls. How do you guys say that? Multnomah Falls. No wonder why I can't say that. And I made a mental note as I was going up that there were 4 sets of stairs at the beginning, because I thought these are really poor contrast. They're basically beige on beige, and I don't want to come down and miss those stairs. So I made a mental note that when I came around the last curve, that I need to start looking for stairs. By then, we got caught in the rainstorm. It was pouring rain. It was very gray, even though it was about an hour and a half from sunset, technically. And there's no way I would have seen those stairs. And I'm thinking, not you personally, but you Oregon visitors people have, thousands upon thousands of people. How hard would it be to put white stripes or yellow stripes on the edges of all those stairs, so that you have better contrast for folks? So we need to think about that. Stairs can be really dangerous. Curbs. What street are we on here? You guys have good vision. We're on blurry street in my world. But lighting also makes a difference. Now, sometimes a traveler can adjust themselves by moving positions, by using a hat. But you want to think about, lighting. In this case, it's more that the sun is causing glare, but also a lot of like bus stations, a lot of terminals, they tend to be really dim. So having some I like overhead recess light, that points down on what folks need to look at, that doesn't have a lot of glare, can be helpful. This is my attempted humor before lunch on a Friday afternoon. But you've all been to the eye doctor's office and you've all read the chart. And what they're really doing is with the eye charts is they're testing visual acuity, the distance at which you see. So in that eye doctor's office, they're tricking your eye into thinking you're 20 feet away from the eye chart. And the term legal blindness that you'll hear people use a lot is 200, meaning a typically sighted person is way back at 200 feet and the visually impaired person is up at 20 feet. You may also hear terms like 20-degree field or 40-degree field. And so that's how restricted your visual field is, that information to the side. So these are, I don't have access to transportation examples, but I'm just trying to give you guys some examples. So these are some clips that were made to illustrate visual acuity for, here, you do that. We want to click about there and the little thing will come up. So this is going to illustrate visual acuity. See, she can't even do it. There we go. I think if you do it over there, it's easier. Volume up just a little bit. Volume's over here. So yeah, you want to push the play on that, and then we'll turn up the volume a little bit. Okay, so try clicking on the video. No. It should be right around there. There you go, I see it.
Acuity loss means that a person does not see clearly or that objects are blurry. For example, near and farsightedness and cataracts are some eye conditions that result in an acuity loss. There are different degrees of acuity loss: 20/70, 2200, 2400, hand motion, and totally blind. Individuals whose vision is 20/70 or worse, with the best correction possible in the best eye, are considered visually impaired. These individuals will have difficulty with reading materials at a distance such as the blackboard and signs. They may have difficulty traveling safely about the environment. $2,200 is an overall blur, which would only allow a person to read the big E from 20 feet away on an eye chart in the doctor's office. This is considered legally blind.
We'll look at one more 2400 here.
$2,400 acuity loss allows a person to see some basic shapes, movement at a distance, and possibly large print up close.
Okay, so as you saw, as the numbers got larger, the second number got larger, the ability, the clarity with which somebody is seeing decreased. Somebody typically who has visual acuity in the 2200 to 2400 range or worse is going to use a white cane. So you've seen those, the black handle, the white shaft, and the red tip, and then usually a red around the bottom and then a little white tip. And that helps people protect themselves from the waist down and gives them information. Maybe any questions about visual acuity? Okay. So sometimes somebody's acuity can be really good, 20/20 even, but their visual field is restricted. So let's just see what happens. This simulation will represent macular degeneration, which is the leading cause of visual impairment in people over the age of 60. So you can click on this one and it'll back up. It should be right around there somewhere. It doesn't like us. All right, we'll look at 20-degree field. That's cool. So let's play this one. No. There you go. All right. So this one's more like a tunnel looking through.
Tunnel vision 20 degrees is the loss of peripheral vision. With this loss, individuals will only be able to see straight ahead and will not be able to see people or things at the sides without turning their eyes or head. A person with a visual field of 20 degrees or less is considered legally blind.
So somebody with this type of field loss is going to miss things, branches that are overhanging a sidewalk, a sign that is pretty close to the walking path. Somebody who's waving at them, to motion them that, hey, that's not the right turnstile to come through. Next one. Some people also have trouble with contrast. So this simulates what it's like, how things look washed out to somebody with a visual impairment sometimes.
Contrast sensitivity is the ability to tell the difference between the lightness and darkness of things. It is being able to tell things apart that are almost the same color. To a person with this loss, everything can appear washed out. It's like looking at a faded photograph.
So this is why when you're thinking about your background colors, your font colors, when you're thinking about also that for contrast, but then also for glare, what's the surface that you're using? How does the light change with that? You can go to the next slide. So for folks with visual impairments, it really comes down to, we can have somebody who has trouble with that low contrast. So being able to see the walk lines, for example, recognizing the stairs is, as I told you, was a challenge for me at the falls the other night. Some folks will have trouble with poor color vision, so different color combinations may be difficult for them. And I gave you an example here of probably the best color combinations for folks with low vision. Black on white, or sorry, white on black or yellow on black can be really helpful. Many people with visual impairments have issues with light sensitivity, so that they find light challenging. I kind of look at that as being their responsibility to have sunglasses, to have a hat, whatever tools they need. But you also, at the same time as you're planning, do want to think about if it's possible to give people options for lighting. Is there extra light that can be turned on, or can light be turned off? Can window coverings, be moved so that somebody can, cut down on how much light is getting in, or allow more light to get in, so that they have some control. Central field restrictions. So folks with macular degeneration, it's kind of like the best example I ever had somebody give me was when somebody takes a picture of you and the flash goes off in your eyes, and just for that second you see that white circle in front of you, and then you only can see what's around you. Well, folks with macular degeneration, it's like that all the time. That central visual area is not available to them. So seeing faces, seeing signs, reading can be a real challenge. So like accessing a schedule for when the max is coming. A lot of times we talked about field restrictions, and I showed you some things, but being able to see things to the side, especially in near space. So you're walking along and all of a sudden there's like a branch that just pops out at you. And that can be really disconcerting, plus it can be really dangerous. And then for a lot of folks, low light, when in combination with the peripheral field loss, is very characteristic of one of the more common causes of visual impairment, which is called retinitis pigmentosa. And folks with retinitis pigmentosa start out having more trouble with night vision initially. So nights can be really challenging for folks, because when you're adding the safety factor on top of the visual impairment factor, a lot of folks will not be secure traveling at night. Let me stop and ask if anybody has any questions. You guys are supposed to have questions at the end, so better start thinking of them. Yes. Sure. Yes. Absolutely. So the largest group of people with visual impairment are older folks, people over the age of 60. If you live long enough, you will get a cataract, which is your lens is actually inside your eye, not in the front of your eye. Your lens will eventually become blurry, and you will get a cataract. It's just part of the aging process. But you have rods and cones in the back of your eye and your retina, and they start to die off in your 30s and 40s. So that's why a lot of folks start to say, I have trouble driving at night. I don't see as well at night as I used to. It's because they're starting to just naturally, as part of the aging process, lose rods and cones. So in the school age population, it's 1 in 1,000 children that have a visual impairment. In the over 80 population, it's 1 in 3. So as we go through life, older adults are more likely to have problems with vision, and you add that to potential mobility problems and dementia and stuff, it can really make travel challenging for folks as they age. Other questions? Okay. So in my world, there's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering if you could speak to, if you talk about light overload, especially at night, when you're thinking
Yes. So those can cause a lot of glare for folks. Some of the new headlights especially are just so bright. So somebody who's walking, for example, if there's too much lights from the headlights, it really can obstruct their ability, for example, to see drop-offs like curbs and stuff. So recessed lighting that thinking about the angle of lighting And one thing I encourage all of you to do, you know, I don't really know much about your backgrounds or specifically why you picked this seminar to attend today, but I feel really strongly about getting people with visual impairments, physical disabilities, cognitive disabilities, to come out and see whatever it is that you're putting together. And not just, you know, in your office, you know, where you're showing them some examples of signs, but can you put those up in the community in a couple of different places, and let's take a group walk, and you know, do you even see the sign? Which of these 3 signs, you know, as we walk down the street is easier for you to see? Let's look at some lighting. So, you know, getting feedback from the consumers that may be looking at whatever it is you're designing a little bit differently, I think is important. Other questions, and it's fine to just yell Penny, because I may miss your hand. All right, so I wanted to talk about the role of the orientation and mobility specialist. Orientation is knowing where you are in space. I have absolutely no idea if I'm facing north, south, east, or west. I am not oriented to your campus in that way. But as a traveler, I'm going to use cardinal directions. I'm going to have a mental map and or a physical map of the area I'm traveling. So even for me, like right now, I really like the Milwaukee orange line, end of the line, Southeast Park stop, because the choo-choo only goes one way, guys. It goes to Center City. I can't mess that one up. But what I really did see today, actually, the lady at the Airbnb was nice enough to drop me off in downtown Milwaukee, which there isn't much downtown Milwaukee. But at the post office, which was right next to the Max, I'm like, thank you, very convenient. And I had a choice. I could go to Milwaukee or I could go to Center City. But it was great. They were big signs, black background, white writing. They were up, obviously, because we don't want anybody hitting our heads on them, but they weren't so far up that I couldn't see them. So I felt really secure that I was really going to go to Center City. Now, in this case, if I would have gone to Milwaukee, it would have been okay, because it would have been one stop. But, you know, I did want to show up on time. So orientation is knowing where you are in space. Mobility is your ability to get there gracefully, efficiently, safely. And many people think about the visually impaired person using a cane as a mobility aid, or what else? The dog. Yeah, everybody's going to get a dog. We'll talk about the dog in a minute. But the deal here is, whether it's the cane or the dog, you as the traveler have to have really good knowledge. The cane or the dog is going to protect you and is going to give you information about the environment, but you need to stay oriented. So thinking about the maps that you make around your transportation, or if you're an architecture person, the building directory thingy that you put by the elevator, you know, you want that to be clear. You want that to be available in multiple formats. So is it available electronically? Some of you may be wondering why I'm holding an iPad when the presentation's right up there. Well, when I really want to read this, I'm here and I'm blocking your view. My back's behind you. It's kind of rude. I'm not as engaged with you. So I typically put my presentation on my iPad so I can, you know, look down at it and still be engaged with the audience. So I want something electronically. But sometimes I want a piece of paper, because I want to sit with a highlighter ahead of time and really go through it. I want to sometimes pull up Google Map and compare that to the map that you've provided me through your organization or agency, and make my own simpler map, because yours may be too visually confusing for me. So you want to think about helping folks orient so that they can have safe and efficient mobility. So this man is working with the orientation and mobility specialist who's helping him learn a new route. We'll go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so what about those dogs? Everybody always wants to ask about the dogs, so I just went ahead and put the dog slide in here. What about the dogs? Let's find the dog slide, Penny. Okay, so really, very few people who are visually impaired actually travel with a dog, somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 people. Something to think about when you're thinking about where you want to donate your dollars. It costs about $45,000 from start to finish to get a dog bred, trained, and in the hands of somebody with a visual impairment. So these dogs are not for everybody. If I have too much vision, the deal is I'm going to try and guide the dog. I'm not going to let the dog guide me. I have to have an active lifestyle. Dogs, like anything else, you don't use it, it loses it. Same thing with the dog. So most guide dog schools want you to walk 2 to 4 miles a day with your dog so that your dog gets to practice the skills and the two of you practice together as a team. Obviously, if I'm allergic to dogs, if I'm scared of dogs, that's going to be an issue. But I also have to have good orientation and mobility skills. I cannot say to the dog, hey, it's lunchtime, let's go over to Smith Union and have, Fido over here take me. Fido does not know that command. Fido knows forward, left, right, and that's it. So it's a combination of voice and hand motions to tell Fido where to go. Fido's job is to protect me for safety. So even when I say forward, if there's a truck barreling down and it happens to be one of those new ones that is the hybrid-y thing that doesn't make noise, like the Prius thing. You know what I mean? Yeah, you guys in transportation know what I mean. All right, those Priuses things. Yeah, Teslas, yeah, bro, yeah. Okay, if Fido's seeing that car and I'm not hearing it and I'm telling Fido forward, we're gonna cross 4th and Harrison here, Fido's not gonna go. He's taught to disobey, to keep me safe. If we're walking along here and there's construction and there's an open manhole or there's the fence with that, that they have up and now you got to kind of, wiggle your way around to get through. Fido's going to check for safety. Fido's trained to look overhead for branches to know how tall I am. Even though Fido's way down there, Fido's looking for branches that don't hit me in the head. But Fido doesn't know how to get to the student union. Now, if I go to the student union 3 or 4 times a week, over time, it's almost going to seem like Fido knows how to get to the student union because we've done that route multiple times. But then the problem is when I decide, I'm not going to get lunch today. I'm going to go and listen to the seminar over here, and I call it the mirrored building. I don't know the name of this place. Then Fido, is like, oh wait, we're changing it here, but still my job is to listen to forward, left, and right. Okay, I think this person might be a little messed up, but hey, I'll go where they're telling me to go. So they're telling me to go forward, left, or right. So that's kind of the deal on the dogs. It's important. All right, next slide. Okay, so bicycling with low vision. So I'm in the process with a colleague. We're publishing a book called Finding Wheels. It's designed for teens and those in their early 20s to explore their options as non-drivers. And when we wrote a copy of this book in 2000, it's really funny when you go to revise a book and it's talking about don't forget your quarters for the payphone. And there's no GPS examples or smartphone examples. So we don't even call it a revision anymore. It's like we pretty much just wrote a new book and used the same format because a lot had changed. But one of the things that we really beefed up was this idea of biking when I have a significant visual impairment. I ride about 3,000 miles a year. I ride it at 10 to 12 miles an hour. I'm a recreational rider, but I also do use my bike for transportation. And I live in Tucson, Arizona. In the city, it's about 500,000. In the county, that includes the city, it's 1.3 million. You guys always beat us up and every bicycling, ranking, but we're up there usually in the top 5. So we're a pretty bicycle friendly city, which most people don't think we are. But part of the reason we're bicycle friendly is we do have about 100 miles now of bike path, which is great. And a lot of that is multi-use, separated from or nowhere near vehicles, which I absolutely love. But when I have to go somewhere new on my bike as a person with low vision, I do a couple things. The first thing is I drive my husband nuts and I say, I'm going to a new dentist. When we're going over to Costco on Sunday, can you drive this route for me so I can check it out? He always wants to tell me to go to the dentist a different way. I'm like, look, I'm the one on the bike, you're at work, and I'm going the way I want to go. And yes, it might be 3/4 of a mile more, but I'm going to feel safer. So go down these streets that I've told you I've checked out on Google Earth. But so I'll go preview it in a car. Then if it's something I'm nervous about, really new, or I'm going to have to cross a couple busy streets or be on a busy street, I will even say to him, hey, next Sunday when we go for a bike ride before we go to Costco, can we ride to the dentist's office and I'll lead? He likes to lead, but when I want to check something out, let me lead. So I'll go ride it in an off-peak time just to check and make sure I know it. So, you know, I really try to be safe. You know, I bright clothing, wear my helmet. For me personally, I like the mirror that clips onto my glasses. I spend a long time looking at trash cans and mailboxes to kind of learn how to focus it so that I can judge better when I'm looking. But people with visual impairments really using hand signals, learning to follow the rules of the road, you know, being safe by taking a class. Just like anybody else, we really want to encourage folks to do those types of things because it really is important. So we'll go on to the next slide, which I think is also about bicycling. Now I got to move this here. Come on, buddy, you can do this. Okay, so if you're in the situation where you're designing things that have to do with bicycling, I love your green paint. And Tucson is finally starting to use green paint for bike lanes. Very, very helpful for people with visual impairments. I think it's very helpful for cars, which is probably why you're doing, because you're not thinking about people with visual impairments. But anything to make those bike lanes more visible, to keep cars and bicyclists obviously separated, but also to cue visually impaired people where to bike. So arrows, you know, that are painted on the road that let you know, high contrast signs. A lot of folks know that you need to look for the green rectangular sign with the white letters. So, you know, that's a pretty well established thing if somebody bicycles. But if you're going to have the words that, you know, talk about next right, also put the arrow up there and make it as big as you can so that you have a combination of the two things. And then, you know, helping our folks know when to slow down. You know, I slow down for green lights. Now, I know that's counterintuitive. You're supposed to speed up for green lights. But I personally, and I tell visually impaired people to do this, like to get to the light when it's red. Because that way, when I start on my bike, that parallel traffic next to me is starting in the intersection, and they're going to block me from people turning. If I get to the intersection and, you know, things are happening and people are turning and all that, visually, that's a lot for me to take in. And so then I'm trying to judge my safety. Meanwhile, I'm slowing down. People are expecting me to speed up. I'm confusing them. They're getting mad. They're honking on their horn. Then I get scared that I'm not moving. Ooh, it's not good. I've had people roll down their window and yell at me and tell me the light's green. I'm like, I know, I'm waiting for it to turn red. So, you know, but I really, when I try to ride as a safe cyclist, I really try to time it that I can get to my bigger intersections on my routes when that light is red. So those are some of my personal tricks. Now, not every visually impaired person is going to approach things differently. And I've been talking to you about people with low vision because about 90% of people who have a significant visual impairment have some usable vision that they're using during travel. It's very rare that you're going to get the person who doesn't see anything. Okay? A person may just see some light. They may see some shadows. They may see objects. So they have something that they're using, and that can be really helpful to them during travel, even if they're reading Braille and listening to things, because they don't have enough vision to access print. That little bit of vision can be very valuable in travel, and that's why this color and contrast and lighting stuff is so important. Okay, next one. Anybody heard of bioptic telescopic systems, or BTSs, or bioptics for driving with low vision? So these are specialized glasses. They have a little telescope in them. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two. They have to be prescribed by an optometrist who knows what they're doing. And most states that license bioptic drivers require that you take driver's education with somebody who really knows how to teach somebody to look through these lenses to drive. But the reality is when somebody's driving with a bioptic, or what we call a BTS, they're only looking through it for just a few seconds, and they're using it to look in on something such as signage, such as the hand signals of the person directing the traffic ahead, such as the overhead sign that tells you that there's an accident 3 miles up. Those types of things. Most of the time, they're using what we call the carrier lens, the lens, you know, the regular lens in the glasses. So the folks who qualify to be low vision drivers with these BTSs have pretty good vision to begin with. Typically, they have to be able to get to 20/80, 2100 acuity. Remember that first little video clip we watched was 20/70. They have to be able to get to that 20/80 or so acuity through their carrier lens before they have the telescope that brings them maybe down to 20/30 or 20/40. So it's a small group of people who drive. It's been a while since I've seen any studies where somebody's really looked at a group of drivers, but in the 90s, California did a study, found out that the people in their state who were licensed to drive with these BTSs, these bioptic telescopic lenses, actually had fewer accidents than people without, just typical vision. And that's because people with BTS will self-limit. So they may not drive on Wednesday night or last night when it was pouring down rain. So living in Portland would probably be tough because you'd be like, well, if there is more than a 10% chance of rain, I'm not going to drive. Well, then you probably don't drive half the year. But good thing you guys have good public transportation, right? So anyway, Bioptics. This is just a short little, television piece, but I just thought I'd show you kind of what it's like for somebody with a bioptic. So we'll watch this video.
Get a little worried.
I started noticing her, she would turn her head to look at you.
Doctors discovered Kennedy had Stargardt disease, a genetic eye disorder that impacts the center of the retina.
I just have a big blind spot in the center.
And for a teenager, that meant no driving. Or did it?
That was a little tough because all of her friends were driving and she wasn't. And so, the doctor was like, this is still a possibility. We can still do this.
That's right. A visit to U of L physicians Andrea Smith-Gray paid off.
So Bioptic driving is a program where someone can drive with basically a telescope in their glasses. And so the idea is that the patient drives looking through their normal lenses, but then they can use the telescope to see detailed signs and cars that are straight ahead.
Smith-Gray is the only optometrist in Louisville fitting vision impaired patients with special telescopes on their glasses so they can drive.
Now I can drive, which is the best thing ever. I just couldn't even believe it. I was like, I'm pretty sure I did a little happy dance like in the DMV. I was so excited. It's just like the best thing that's ever happened to me because it's so convenient and taking myself places, but also like I'm not depending on other people.
Kennedy and others with Stargardts or other visual impairments are required to take about a year's worth of driving lessons with the telescope. Kennedy needs that telescope to magnify road signs so she can read them, especially on that 4-hour drive to Murray State University, where she's a freshman cheerleader.
It's amazing. I think most of us take for granted that we are drivers. And, I pull into McDonald's every day and then sweet tea. And when she was little, I was like, she's never going to be able to do that. She's never going to be able to go to school, to be a part of her children's life. And now she can do that.
And Kennedy's mom has nothing but praise for the U of L physicians who have given her daughter that freedom.
They've been amazing. They've been her number one cheerleader and have said it's okay. She can do this.
And what does Kennedy say to the rest of us, drivers who aren't legally blind and may wonder about her ability?
Don't be scared of that they're letting visually impaired people on the road because we're probably more trained than you are.
Right. All right. So anyway, so that just gives you a taste of bioptic telescopic systems and how somebody drives with one. I put 1, 2, 3, 4. I put 5 discussion questions up here just to kind of get us going. We can talk about each of them individually. We can bounce around, but I have one more fun video right at the end for you. But at this point, I was planning to open it up for discussion, comments, questions, ideas that you have. Maybe you want to bounce? Yes, please.
During
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
During construction in some areas of town, are the temporary construction and pedestrian control signage typically helpful? Like when I'm talking about the A-frame orange signs that has pedestrian detours, is that enough for visual impaired people?
Again, it's going to depend on the person and how much usable vision they have. Again, if you can, not again, because I haven't said it yet. If you can have multiple ways to let people know in the community that that's coming up. So, does the news have a, PSA piece you can put that, we're going to be doing construction for the next 2 months at 4th and Harrison, walk on the west side. If the first maybe couple days when that construction's underway, if you have the construction workers, obviously they have their real job, but they can keep an eye out for any pedestrians that might typically be using that route that just need a little bit of orientation. It's going to be hard. Somebody's going to come along, they're going to find construction. Hopefully they're going to know it's there because of the sounds when their cane hits a fence. I think sometimes it's alerting people, hey, keep an eye out if you see somebody that looks lost, can you go over and ask them if they need information? And that's the first thing you always should do if you meet a visually impaired person. Hey, you look like you're lost. My name's Penny. Can I give you a hand? What do you need? And they may tell you they don't need anything. They're perfectly fine. And accept that. Thanks. Other questions? There's a gentleman in the blue shirt.
So my question is about pedestrian wayfinding signs and systems. Beyond good contrast on the signs, do you have any recommendations if we're starting to design a system? What should we be considering?
Simpler is better.
Simpler is better. Okay.
Yeah, I think the less clutter is better. I know I just said that with the last one, but how do I find those wayfinding signs? Is there information I can download? I have to give PDX, your airport, a huge shout out. Matter of fact, I meant to add the picture. This is the first time I did not have to stress about where to find the lift when I got here. You have literally like a whole giant pole that is a big pink sign that you can see when you come out of baggage claim across 2 islands. I was not looking for a little tiny sign that said rideshare here. Which half the time I walk by 3 times before I can find it. I'm like, oh my God, there's a whole wall for me. In fact, I put it on Facebook. I'm like, they have a penny-sized lift sign at PDX. And my friends who know me, just everybody was laughing because it really is. It was penny-sized. It wasn't super-sized. It was penny-sized. But I think multiple methods, having signs, ideally in my world, at different heights. Because somebody in a wheelchair, they're not going to be looking anywhere near as high as somebody who's 6'2". So, can you have signs at different heights? It was nice when I came in this building off of the street that runs that way, that real quickly, there was big letters and numbers that pointed to rooms 180 to whatever. And it was very clear that I needed to walk out the next set of doors into the courtyard. Now, the little tiny black signs with the white letters outside the door, they could have been a little bit better numbers. They could have been a little bit bigger. But, sometimes they're right way above the door, and that's really hard to see. Other questions?
I'll just throw out my question. We hosted Mobility Matters earlier this year, which is an all-day summit, and we had tactile maps.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you have any experience using the tactile maps or have any commentary on the potential for them for indoor wayfinding, because I think oftentimes, like you just mentioned, wayfinding outside is well, not perfect, it's covered. Indoor wayfinding is really bad.
Yeah. So tactile maps are great if they're clear. And the challenge is we don't have a lot of consistency in how they're made. So if I don't have an orientation to that map, it's a bunch of squiggles and it's a bunch of textures. So one thing I really like, and I know they are doing it on the Google campus, is they have an auditory paired with it. So I touch on the map and it's telling me where I need to go, what that room is. So if you could, add any type of auditory component, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It could just be, this map shows the PSU campus. North is, and I'm making this up, I'm so unoriented, but goes from Broadway on the north to 3rd on the south, and the libraries at the intersection of 2nd and College. To help people kind of orient. Keep it simple. They typically say no more than 5 textures on a map. so that way it's available. And if it's a bigger area, even breaking it down into smaller maps. So here's the map of the second floor north side of the building. Here's the map of the second floor south side of the building. And then having a really clear key, because when you start to put things into Braille, it takes up a lot of space. So, you know, rather than having special ed 280, you know, you might just have SE, and then there's a key that comes before the map. So I find the key first. So that's going to help me know, okay, I need to look for SE for special ed. I hope some of those things helped. Okay. Then for low vision color. So you can combine print and Braille sometimes as well. You just have to be careful about where you place things so they don't kind of overlap too much.
I was going to ask about other great examples that you've seen where you've felt like someone had actively thought about your experience in a space and what those sort of specific design details might have been, as far as maybe beyond like signage, but even tactility or like material changes as you move into a new space, or the color of a space is totally different. So, you know, you're in a different wing or a different floor, stuff like that in the design realm.
Where does Trek live? What's the name of your guys' building? Where Holly is? Okay. No, but where Holly's office is, in Michael's office. Okay. So in 4th Avenue, when you get off the elevator on the 2nd floor to go to the special ed office, it's pretty visually confusing up there, but they have this gray carpeting that has these red and blue and green blocks in it. And that has worked really well for me this week because I've been on the PP level thinking, oh, okay, this is the Holly, I call it Holly's level, but we're the special ed faculty that is working with people with visual impairment that I'm doing my main work for this week. And so I'll go around the corner from the elevator and I'm like, okay, no green, gray. I must have gotten off on the wrong one again, because on the P level and on the level 2, there's a green wall with white letters that says College of Education. But apparently, I finally realized yesterday that above on the P level, which stands for Plaza, I believe, I thought it was parking, but somebody corrected me on that one too. Because I'm like, why is lower level below parking? I'm confused over here in this, as I call it, the Holly building. But it says second floor College of Ed in small writing. I mean, not real small writing, it means they're on the wall. And then it says College of Ed, but I was catching the College of Ed, so I thought, oh, I'm on the Holly level. And then I get off, I can't find my gray carpeting. I'm like, oh, I did it again. So carpeting can be really helpful if it's not too busy. Like think of that carpeting I showed you in that hotel. Door jambs. So you can aesthetically paint door jambs different colors to provide more contrast. So this is an example for a child with multiple disabilities in his home, but I mean, I think you can translate it into your world. This child went to a school for the blind, so he was only home, you know, for a week here and a couple months in the summer there. And they painted the house one time when he was gone, and he came home and everything was white. The kitchen was white, the bathroom was white, the doors to the bedrooms were white, the door jambs were white. And he had teenage siblings, and of course, you know, teenagers, get out of my room, you know. And you know, he's this blind kid or this very low vision kid, and he has other cognitive issues. And he you know, he thinks he's going into the bathroom, and he opens the door, and it's his sister's bedroom, and she's, you know, upset that he's in there. And the mom was texting with the teacher of visually impaired students. She's like, it seems like he's never been home before. And the teacher said, well, what did you do? She's like, well, we painted the house while he was gone. She said, well, how'd you paint it? She's like, white. And she's like, can you put a rug outside of the bathroom door? But really, can you go paint the door jambs? And so they did. They let each of the kids in the family, this kid knew color, he cognitively knew that, let each of the kids in the family, including him, pick a color for their door jambs. And they made a Saturday fun thing of, you know, everybody painted their door jambs, and brother stayed out of sister's purple room, you know, because the kids had all picked orange for the bathroom. Funky looking house, yes, but it involved brothers and sisters, and it helped them understand, you know, that, hey, this is why your brother's doing weird stuff. So, yeah. But, you know, I mean, I think you can do it aesthetically, you know, like with a stripe down the hall that, you know, then goes into the door jambs, carpeting. changes in lighting. So, you know, maybe you have a bluish tint light in this area versus a white tint light in that area. How am I doing? I have to save 2 minutes for my video at the end. Are there distance people that want to ask questions too? I don't want to leave them out.
I have a question about apps that provide turn-by-turn directions and also perhaps transit stop notifications.
Yes.
How are those? Because I imagine it could be difficult to actually program them to tell you, or, you know, for where you're going. So what has been your experience with those types of apps?
They have made a huge difference for people with visual impairments. There's going to be a guy presenting in Hoffman Hall on Sunday specifically about apps for people with visual impairments. I don't know if that's open to people or is it just Holly and Amy's people or not, but he's amazing. His name is Chris Tabb, and he, T-A-B-B, and he's really done a lot with apps as far as what's accessible. There's a new app out. It's A-I-R-A, IRA, I believe is how it's pronounced, where you can connect with a person, a live person, hold up your phone and show them that construction going on here on the way walking from Holly's building to here. Is that Harrison? I think it's Harrison or Fourth. Still a little mixed up because I don't look at signs, I look for landmarks. So that one's really great. Your TriMet app is accessible, so it does work with voiceover, so it works fine with speaking. All your iPhones, all your Apple devices, and your Android devices as well have a lot of accessibility features built into them. The iPhone has more, so I can do things with color contrast, making it louder, making it talk to me if the app is set up properly for the talking part. And more companies are getting that awareness, especially if they're getting federal dollars. Any else?
I was wondering if you could talk to the importance of audible signals in both finding things as well as for crossing the street and the need for clarity on those.
Absolutely. A lot of the audible signals also have a tactile component. So if I'm in a busy place or I have a hearing impairment, you know, or traffic is masking it, it's going to vibrate when it's time for me to cross. They've done some studies to try to figure out, you know, whether the chirpy bird is better or the person talking. And from what I've seen and read, it sounds like the person talking, you know, walk sign is on, wait, wait, wait. You know, or, you know, cross Harrison, that getting a verbal command is more secure than people, especially when you're traveling in an unfamiliar area and you don't know if chirp means your street, you know, which street does, you know, what street is it that I need to cross. I don't know the regs on where they need to be located near the intersection, but I know that there are guidelines on where those should be located so that people can find them. And the same thing with, you know, how you position the truncated domes and the curb cuts for folks that are using wheelchairs. So, you know, consistency is probably the most important thing to say in any environment. But I know many people with visual impairment who really appreciate APSs. Audible pedestrian signals.
I can give some more context too. I do know that there's some restrictions on how close they can be to a residence building as well due to noise issues. So I think the chirping actually is probably more problematic because it's more loud and annoying, I guess, you know, to a resident whose window might be near, you know, et cetera. So I do know there's certain things about setback on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Could you speak to any challenges about recognizing we seem to have a whole bunch of new kind of pedestrian activated signs between rapid rectangular flashing beacons that alert the cars that there's someone crossing but do not stop the cars, to the Arizona's got a lot of those.
My husband and I argue about them regularly. In Arizona, we call them hawks and toucans. You guys know that stuff. I don't, but yeah. I personally hate them. I absolutely just hate them because this is my personal bias. We have a hawk, which I guess stops all the traffic in both directions. very close to our house by a busy road that I often cross. And I will go an extra quarter of a mile to cross at a light-controlled intersection, then cross between the two light-controlled intersections that are half a mile apart. So I don't want to cross at that quarter of a mile from either one. I want to go up and cross at my light-controlled intersection. And my husband keeps telling me, it's perfectly safe. I'm like, honey, they're not expecting to have to stop, and some of them blow through it. And I, as a low vision person, whether I'm walking or biking, I can't judge that that car is slowing down and coming to a stop. I am not putting my feet, and I've been hit 3 times, and none of them were my fault. And I'll tell you that in a minute. But I don't put my feet out into an intersection or my wheel out into an intersection until everybody has stopped. And that's really confusing to drivers at those hockey things, in my opinion, or those Tucson things. You know, a light-controlled intersection, when turns from red to green and I can have that blocking parallel traffic, feels so much safer to me. And I haven't talked to enough other folks with visual impairments to get a feel if they're fans of hot flashers or not. So.
There's a difference in Oregon between a hot light and rapid flash speed. In Oregon, you have to stop at a hot light, solid red.
Okay.
And before it does, it turns into a flashing red, solid red, and then another flashing red. It allows them to go to. I personally love them as opposed to a rapid flash speed.
Okay.
Because
that sounds a little safer to me, because I think ours just go from yellow to red and then they go away. You know, when it's safe for the drivers to start driving.
Are there similar difficulties with mid-block crossings that are just crosswalks without buttons?
Yes, because especially if I have really low vision or I'm blind and I don't know it's there, finding it, knowing I'm really lined up, making sure I have my cues to know it's safe can be harder. You know, in a pedestrian, real residential area, maybe okay, but in a more urban area like this, most orientation and mobility instructors would teach people to go to light-controlled intersections if at all possible, or to solicit aid like, hey, are you going to cross the street? Is it safe? Can I end with a little humor for you? Okay. So this is just a commercial that I really like that stuck. Oh, back one. And this is just a commercial for fun. Turn down just a little bit. It's going to get loud. Oops. It's a visual thing anyway. Here's my favorite part. Get ready. Give him the cake. I can watch that commercial all day long. It just cracks me up. But I guess, part of the reason I thought it would be fun to end with that is just people with visual impairments do travel. They might be a little creative in their travel. They may take a little bit longer to travel. They may need orientation and mobility to get to know the environment, but they're not going to sit home on their duffs. They're going to be out there doing their things. So thank you for starting to think about how you can make your travel, your buildings more inclusive for not just people with visual impairments, but with all disabilities. So thank you for inviting me today.
Much, Penny. This was really awesome. I wanted to share that our next Friday seminar is on July 26th. It's our PBOT Lunch and Learn Partnership event. It's going to focus on enhanced transit corridors in Portland, and you'll be hearing from Gabe Graff, who is the Central City Capital Delivery Team member. So hope you'll join us in a few weeks on July 26th as well, or online. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.